right. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Victoria Nalule, and here with me, I have Tosin from Nigeria. We have Karim, who's from the private sector, but from Egypt. And we also have Mostafa from Egypt. Noreen will not be able to make it for this webinar, but we shall record a different webinar with her with respect to her chapter on barriers to energy transitions in Africa. So without wasting any time, I would like our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and there afterwards, Tosin will start the discussion with the initiatives to transition to a low-carbon economy in Nigeria, and Mostafa will also come in with his presentation on the initiatives in Egypt, and then Karim will come in with the initiatives in the private sector, and then we shall discuss the barriers to energy transition, and that will be the end of our webinar. So Tosin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nalule, for this opportunity. My name is Tosin Timitimi. I'm an energy and finance lawyer at the Ministry of Energy. I also have an LLM from the University of Dundee in Energy Law and Policy. I work on several projects, gas to power, electricity, oil and gas projects, and this will be the basis of our discussion today. Thank you for attending.
All right, Karim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say good morning to all of you, and good mornings to all of the audience that are listening to me right now. I am Karim Ahmed. I am an engineer. I'm working for Siemens Energy, and I am working as a commissioning gas turbine service engineer. And I have my own. I am also an entrepreneur in the energy sector. I have my own company which is working for the energy studies across the region, for the MENA region and North America as well. That's all.
Thank you, Mostafa, for introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Nali. It's a great honor for me to be with you today. I am Mostafa Elshazly. I am working as a senior associate in Zaki Hashim and Partners. It's one of the top tier law firms in Egypt with a main focus on energy projects and oil and gas projects. Before joining Zaki Hashim and Partners, I worked for several institutions and companies, including the Egyptian Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources and the Egyptian General Petroleum Corporation. I hold a PhD in law with a special focus on petroleum agreements. Currently, I am a part-time lecturer of law in several educational institutions, including Cairo University.
All right. Thank you very much, Mostafa, for the introduction. And also thank you, Tosin and Karim. So today's discussion is going to focus on national initiatives to transition to a low-carbon economy, but specifically also addressing the barriers to these initiatives in Africa. So like I mentioned, this is part of the African Energy Transitions book launch, and the presenters, including Tosin and Mostafa, do have chapters in this book. But however, Karim is coming in as a guest who's from the private sector, and will be giving us some views on some of the barriers to energy transitions in the perspective from the private sector. So I would call upon Ms. Tosin to briefly take us through her book chapter, specifically looking at the initiatives to transition to a low-carbon economy in Nigeria. Tosin, your presentation will be for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mostafa, Tosin is going to present first, and then you will present second.
Okay.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Nalule and the panelists. I'm going to be speaking on the book we're writing on. We're writing on the African energy sector, impact of energy transitions and climate change on future developments. The chapter written by myself is on energy transition in West Africa, with a case study on Nigeria. The book comprises of different contributors from different parts of the world, and we're all talking about similar things. I have Kester Oyibo as well, who's in the book. He's speaking about electricity, energy transitions, and electricity, and how this can actually come together, which is similar to the chapter of the book. So the chapter I'll be writing on is called Energy Transition in West Africa, with a case study on Nigeria. As already said, I'm an energy lawyer and finance lawyer working with the Ministry of Energy. So just to give a brief summary about the book, I only have 10 minutes to explain the book. So I will just focus on a few things in the book. So we have 3 or 4 recurrent things as summaries in the book. We have creating an enabling environment using our gas reserves, and also including renewable energy into the mix. All of this is to facilitate electricity access and energy access in general. We can see that there will be an improvement in the mini grids, off grids, off grids, and also standalone generators in the next 20 years. So Nigeria has a lot of legislations, but I will just reduce to the legislations in 1995, which plan to create an enabling environment for investments, which is the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission Act. And also on a regional level, we have the ECOWAS Energy Protocol of 2003. What these legislations do is, as I said, to create an enabling environment. We have Nigeria is taking a lot of steps to improve gas regulations in Nigeria and to harness our amount of gas reserves. We already have qualified applicants who are being trained on a regular basis to turn our gas into wealth and also create jobs for our economy. To include renewable energy in the mix, albeit small or large, we would need a renewable energy legislation backed by an act of parliament. We've seen Nigeria committing 20% of our energy mix to renewables. However, countries like Ghana, where you already see so much electricity compared to Nigeria, Ghana already has a lot of electricity compared to Nigeria. And I would believe it's because they already have a Renewable Energy Act. So if we can take all these steps towards improving our regulatory regime, then we can start to consider reducing energy poverty in Nigeria. So just a brief setting about what the chapter holds. Our focus is on West Africa and Nigeria. Nigeria has a population of about 200 million people as at 2018, and an annual population growth of 2.6%. This is about double the growth in the United States at the moment. Nigeria has 98% of the 30% West African gas reserves. So West Africa has 30% gas reserves in the whole African continent. 98% of that comes from Nigeria, which is about 4 billion cubic meters. For people considering solar irradiation, Nigeria and West Africa, which is actually why renewable energy is important. Please look at Africa and West Africa generally. Nigeria has a monopoly of gas reserves, which is a good thing for our economy. However, when you look at the general population in West Africa, the general fuel that we have is renewable energy, especially in northern parts of Ghana, where there have already been financial analysis regarding the areas where you can actually invest in. So as already discussed, one of the main things and one of the main issues is how are we going to use regulations to create as a backbone for for the energy transition. We already know that the United Nations has been taking steps to improve our climate change situation, and also there's the NDC, which provides for us to use our natural gas rather than liquid fuels, and also to end gas flaring by 2030. So again, we see policies creating opportunities for investments, and also yes. So now when we look at the chapter in general, we can already identify two things. We have gas, and we also have some investment challenges. We already know that 50% of our GDP comes from oil and gas reserves. As a matter of fact, as a result of the oil and gas price wars and the price slash that we already see in the economy today and COVID-19, Nigeria has had to re-strategize its budget and reduce our spending power by 2% just in the past few months, from about 8 trillion to 5 trillion naira, just because of how important oil and gas reserves are. So when you look at gas, you realize that gas is not taking a back seat. It is here to stay in Africa and West Africa. And then you begin to ask, who exactly is driving the energy transition? Is it Nigeria? Is it the world? Because if you really look at it, the European Union, who are the champions of renewable energy, still import large amounts of oil and gas from West Africa, which represents 4.2% for oil and 3.6% for natural gas. So in order to transition, Nigeria and Africa would have to start, and West Africa would have to start looking at how are we going to surpass our investment challenges. African Development Bank has already given us the statistics. For us to improve our infrastructure gap, we need an investment into our economy of more than $170 billion. How are we going to get that? And also keep in mind local content, because local content is an important part of our oil and gas regulations, and also should be implemented in renewable energy investments, especially because Nigeria has pledged 20% of our GDP to come from manufacturing output. So as an investor, I will be considering investing in the sector because there is a lot of gas in our sectors and it is still being utilized, but also finding a way of improving our technology, improving the Nigerian content. So by technology transfer or by using manufactured products in Africa and Nigeria. So there's always this friction when it comes to energy transition. And then we start to ask ourselves, what are the challenges, what are the problems that's preventing Nigeria from transitioning properly, that's preventing us from getting to the state where we have access to energy, both electricity and just improving our technology. So when you look at gas, because this paper we're looking at gas and also renewable energy, there are penalties that prevents gas flaring, but we have to consider these carbon credits and these penalties, are they actually punitive enough? Do we need to add more stringent penalties to ensure that gas is not being flared in Nigeria, and also to make sure that it is utilized properly for economic development? And when you look at solar, you already looked at over 400 solar companies are registered in Nigeria alone, and there have been so many power purchase agreements, but not even 1 megawatt has been added to the grid. So where exactly is the problem? As a lawyer, I would think, is there any regulatory gap? Is there any regulatory intervention that has not yet taken place? Well, I always say this, whenever you're looking at energy contracts, you look at it as a contract as opposed to legal jargon that can actually prevent it from actualizing. there are so many ways around it. For instance, if you're providing 1 megawatt or less electricity in Nigeria, you do not need to get any legal backing or regulation. So at the end of the day, I believe the energy transition is going to be through bilateral contracts and private and public participation.
So, Tosin, you do have a few minutes if you can do the concluding remarks.
All right. Okay, so as already discussed, we see that we have so much competition in Nigeria with our gas reserves and also with the US shale revolution. With the US shale revolution, we see how, although in the short term, if you know about shale revolution, you know that in the short term, we can really harness our gas development, because the shale market is not working right now. The shale market depends on oil and gas revenues to increase. However, if oil and gas revenues start to increase, it also means that the shale would boom. So we have to start thinking of economic diversification, because there's so much competition from all sides. And finally, like I said, the book has different themes. I believe that energy access is the key thing in Africa. We have to find a way of improving our technology. If it's through grid to vehicles, which is also a theme in this book, are we going to improve our grid to vehicle or vehicle to grid? This would require us considering our electricity power sector reform laws, our third-party access. So finally, I believe that Nigerian economy, it looks bright and there is opportunity for gas and also solar, but there will be different players. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Tosin. Now, would like to hear from Mostafa, who will give us a brief of what's happening in Egypt. And also, I must note that Mostafa wrote his chapter on renewable energy developments in Egypt, so you'll learn a lot from him. Mostafa, go ahead. Tosin, could you please stop sharing your screen?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to first participate in the books, in which several expertise all over the world and mainly in Africa has been involved in, and wrote important chapters in covering the situation of transitioning to a low carbon economy and development of renewable resources. My chapter focuses mainly on Egypt as a main case study. And I'd like first to introduce important facts about Egypt. Egypt is the most populous country in North Africa and the Arab region. And this actually has led to a rapid increase in energy demand and pushed the country to figure out ways in order to satisfy the domestic market with its needs from energy. Before 2015, Egypt was suffering from a shortage in natural gas, and that's why Egypt was an importer of natural gas. Subsequent to 2015 and after stable investment environment, some important discoveries were achieved, particularly in the Mediterranean Sea, and resulted in changing the map of natural gas, not only in the MENA region, but also in whole Africa. And Egypt declared that important discoveries were achieved in the Mediterranean Sea. That's why the country accelerated the development of such discoveries. And this was led by ENI after declaring the commercial discovery in Zohr field, and followed by British Petroleum and other international oil companies in the country. This actually was supported by important initiatives declared by the Egyptian government, represented by the Ministry of Petroleum. And they declared important initiative in connection with attracting more investment in the upstream sector in order to satisfy the domestic needs from energy. But despite the foregoing, Egypt is committed to pursue its ambitious plans to satisfy the market with its needs from energy. And that's why it's very crucial for Egypt to diversify the energy mix. So one of the most important reasons behind changing the energy mix and reducing depending on fossil fuel as a main source of energy is the fact that the growth of the population in the country and the industrial development requires to search for alternative sources for energy. That's why Egypt adopted an ambitious plan in order to diversify the energy mix and the deployment of renewable energy development. Apart from this, Egypt became a signatory to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. And that's why Egypt is committed to reduce its carbon footprint. This is another reason behind transitioning to renewable energy resources. Furthermore, Egypt enjoys a very ideal conditions for the development of renewable energy resources because it enjoys an intensive solar radiations in its deserts and the coastal seas and coastal areas in the Red Sea are among the finest areas to wind. So we have reasons behind transitioning to a low carbon economy. And in fact, the Egyptian government adopts and declared the issuance of important legislations in connection with the development of renewable resources in the country. In 2014, the Renewable Energy Law was issued regarding the development of renewable energy resources. And after that, in 2015, the Electricity Law was issued and the Investment Law in Egypt issued in 2017. Each law organizes some certain issues related directly to the development of renewable energy resources. And the Renewable Energy Law sets different and various schemes for renewable energy projects in the country based on EPC contracts, feed-in tariff, and BOO scheme. In this respect, I'd focus on the governance of the Egyptian petroleum sector. The Egyptian petroleum sector is guided by the policies and the strategies set by the Supreme Energy Council, and such policies and strategies are executed by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Resources in connection with fossil fuel development, and the electricity and the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy. The Egyptian government adopts an ambitious strategy known as the Integrated Sustainable Energy Strategy, ISES, to 2035. This strategy aims at the deployment of renewable energy development and changing the energy mix, targeting 20% of electricity production from renewable energy resources by 2022 and 42 by 2035. And in fact, this is a very ambitious plan, and Egypt is in its way to execute and perform this strategy in an ideal manner. And we have some successful case studies in this regard. I refer here to Bimban Solar Park, which is considered one of the largest solar parks in the country and in the world. And this project principally relies on the feed-in tariff scheme. And on the other side, we have another successful wind project in Zafarana area and Gulf of El Zayt. So we have some important plans, and these plans are supported by legislations. These legislations introduces important incentives for developers and investors who are seeking to develop and invest in the renewable energy sector. Such incentives are mainly financial in terms of custom exemptions and some tax incentives. On the other side, it's very important to point out here to the bilateral investment treaties. Egypt is a country that signs the largest number of bilateral investment treaties in the country and provides important incentives for investors who are seeking to invest in the renewable energy sector. Despite all of this, there exists another challenges that may hinder renewable energy projects in Egypt. And I put it in details in my chapter. Some of these challenges relate to the creditness of EETC, the Egyptian Electricity Transition Company, which is in charge of supplying the domestic market and non-qualified consumers with their needs from electricity. That's why they may sign IPPs or PPAs, power purchase agreements with investors. And the creditworthiness of EETC is a very important and critical issue for investors who signs PPAs with EETC. So it's very important to consider the creditworthiness of EETC, and it's as a standalone company. That's why it should be supported by the Egyptian government and the Ministry of Finance by giving such company a guarantee while signing their and implementing their obligations under the signed PPAs. Another important challenge is a matter relates to streamlining the process of starting and implementing the project. As you may know, the lands for projects are given under a usufruct scheme. That's why it's very important to give some incentives and streamlining the process of land allocation in order to start a renewable energy project in the country. Furthermore, some challenges relate to the need to give some incentives for small scale and medium scale developers, because some professionals raised the point that Egypt and the Egyptian government may give certain incentives for large scale projects, but small scale and medium scale may not receive the same attention. So this may be a challenge as well. And in my book, I referred to another important measures that were adopted recently by the Egyptian government to support the process of transitioning to a low carbon economy and spreading the notion of electricity operated cars and vehicles. That's why the Egyptian government set some legislations in this respect and giving some incentives related to custom exemption on electricity imported vehicles. And there is another measure that has been adopted by the Egyptian government, which is in production of electricity from garbage. This is a very important issue as well, because we have here in Egypt huge amounts of wastes and garbage. And the term waste here refers to biofuel and other wastes. So the government adopts another important measure to incentivize production of electricity from garbage. Okay, by this, I concluded what I mentioned in my chapter, and will be very happy to receive some feedbacks from you. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mostafa. And now would like Karim to come in briefly with how the private sector is handling the transition to a low carbon economy, given the fact that you yourself you've been working with the private sector for a very long time. Karim, could you please do?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I want to say again, good afternoon to all the people who are listening to me now for our hot topic regarding low carbon emissions, and also we are moving to decarbonizing our product, and for everything that we are using, that we must have a vision. I want to focus on this point, the vision. The most important thing is that we must have a clear vision for our if I can say, a clear governmental vision towards the low carbon sector. In Africa, I see a lot of case studies, especially in Harvard Business School, which is producing now a very, very unique report regarding the problems that facing the decarbonizing and moving to the low emission in Africa. And I want to show you this number. They have three numbers, which is very, very important regarding Nigeria, regarding South Africa, and regarding Egypt as well. The first number regarding Nigeria, that Nigeria wants to move towards the decarbonizing around, and they have a vision in order to move to 23% of its production to be a renewable energy in 2030. That is the first number. Second number for Egypt, which is Egypt wants to move to about 22% of all of the production for the power sector at 2023. And the third number is South Africa, that South Africa wants to move to be around 18% of its production for the electricity at 2025. This is three numbers. I see this is very, very important and unique. That how we can reach this number, how these countries move in order to get these numbers at this short term. This is very, very important for us, and we must have this vision in order to move to this one. And we must put this vision in the DNA of the private sector, because the private sector in Africa especially is facing a great challenges, which is not compared. We cannot compare it to Europe or to America, because they have a great change in the regulatory information that they are sharing, and all of the legislative information that they are sharing with all of the private sector in this area. So we need to concentrate in all of that. Is my advice to all of the governmental institutions, all of the governmental that are working for this strategy, that you must have a vision in order to move, how to make this transition to the low carbon economy. It is not just that we are talking, oh, we need to move the private sector that is engaged with us, but at the end, you be useful for you. That's the first point that I want to highlight. Second point, if you want to get the truth, you need to pay for it. This is one of the words that I listened to Mr. George in Harvard Business School when he's talking about all of the energy transition. And when you think about it, that he want to tell very, very important. If you want to move to the low emissions and to the great ecosystem, you need to pay for it. And how you can pay for it? You need to fund for it. And this is the rule for the funders. We need to push our banks. We need to push our government, and put a very, very important financial aid to all of the companies which are working for this transition. The transition is very costly. The transition is not as it's not very easy like if you want to make a post, or if you are moving with a high emission car, that you will carbon emission, you need to pay for it. That's why we need to push all of the banks and all of the government in order to put a very supporting and a lot of funding to invest in this in this field. This is the second thing that I want to highlight. The third thing, which I see also is very important, is creating opportunities for the micro project. If I can divide the electricity in Africa, especially, we will divide it in two classification for the project: micro project and macro project. We have a very big production power plants. Even talking about the energy sector, I want to highlight on it right now, because this is the big disaster for us in the carbonizing that we are facing for the low carbonizing that we are facing. If we want to move to this transition, we need to support the micro project, not only the macro project, and that we are not seeing in Africa. In Africa, all of the governments want to establish a big power plants, which is using high number of gigawatts in order to supporting the infrastructure for the energy. But we see another vision towards it. If you support the micro project, the support must go to the micro project, not the macro project. And that's why also we see the World Bank group now is trying to transfer to supporting all of the entrepreneur which is working in the micro project in order to inject and to push all of the financial system in order to move. This is the second thing. Third thing that I want to talk about. The last thing that we need to put a lot of laws and a lot of regulatory information regarding to building, to all of our buildings. All of our buildings is moving a great emission, which is not completely useful for the ecosystem. But if you put all of these models in order to reach to the green eco building, that will be great. And I want to also highlight to my company Siemens, which is now making a complete building without zero emission and without no complete emission come from the air conditioner, from everything. And also we are producing from Siemens now the first turbines which is working with zero parts per million for the emissions and no NOx and low NOx. And this is very important, because this great investment is working with pushing towards the turn. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And thank you all.
All right, thank you very much. I've seen here questions mostly from Ivan. Ivan, could you audibly ask these questions? I've promoted you to be able to speak. As I see your address, you have different questions for all the panelists. Are you able to speak, Ivan? Hello, Ivan, are you able to speak? All right, maybe he's not able to speak. But he asks Tosin, what are some of the possible setbacks the Nigerian oil sector has encountered? And also, Tosin, are you able to read the questions he raises?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Dr. Victoria.
Yeah, please do respond to them. And then Mostafa also go through the Q&A and be able to summarize the questions addressed to you and be able to respond to them.
All right. Okay, so Ivan has asked the question, what measures has Nigeria dealt with the problem of corruption in the energy sector? Well, we have laws already in place. We have the Nigeria Extractive Industry Establishment Transparency Initiative Act, the EITI Act 2007, which basically monitors and ensures accountability of revenues of the federal government from oil and gas companies. So there is already a system in place which prevents any form of corruption in Nigeria. Secondly, Ivan asked about the Ngoni and Shell case in Nigeria's Niger Delta, and how has the Nigerian government been able to reduce the limitations for transitional companies. Well, I believe he's talking about the environmental issues when it comes to the Niger Delta. And this is something that the Nigerian government has taken, but also we have World Health Organization coming in. We have other Amnesty as well coming in to solve these environmental issues. So I mean, there's already so much remediation going on in the Niger Delta, and I believe that that should have answered the questions. Thank you.
And then there are some questions raised to Mostafa. Do you want to respond to them? He's asking for you to clarify on issues of bilateral investment treaties as a possible incentive tool, and how the Egyptian courts deal with bilateral conflicts in case they involve foreign investors that might refute the application of domestic law. But this is not really so energy related, unless if you want to respond to it. And also he's asking, from your presentation, you have raised the important role of waste conversion as another means of energy generation. What technological methods have been used in enabling the recycling of waste into energy in Egypt? Could you please respond in a few minutes?
Yeah. I'll start with his question. Thank you first for your question, Ivan. Very nice one. You refer to bilateral investment treaties signed by the Egyptian government. In fact, the number of bilateral investment treaties, as I mentioned in my presentation, exceeds 100, making Egypt on top of the African countries who have signed bilateral investment treaties and giving certain incentives for investors, and including, for sure, investors in the renewable energy field. And once such bilateral investment treaties are signed, they become apart from the local legislation in the country, and it's binding for all the people here, including the judiciary system in the country. And most of these bilateral investment treaties, including arbitration clause. That's why in case of any conflict or dispute raised between investor and the government, he may resort to international arbitration. And it's worth mentioning in this respect to mention that Egypt is a signatory to the New York Convention for the enforcement of for the decisions of international arbitration. So it's a very important matter and considerable by investors who are seeking to invest their money in the renewable energy sector in the country. I'll move to the other question. Relates to, you have given us a list of several energy laws that the Egyptian government has devised. Are there hardships that your government has encountered in promoting specific sections of these laws that relate to aspects of energy transitions? Yes, there were some hardships, but let us say that most of these legislations have a tight link to renewable energy projects, and they give certain incentives for investors in the energy sector. We set various schemes to carry out renewable energy projects, and this for sure will have a direct impact on energy transition, because if you have a good investment climate for renewable energy, so this will facilitate the process of transitioning to a low carbon economy and changing the energy mix. The other question relate to, you have given us this, answer it. Regarding the production of electricity from waste, I'd like to highlight here that the decree regarding the production of electricity from waste was issued lately in 2019, but so far we don't have the technology, or we don't have a comprehensive grasp of the technology that can be used in order to produce electricity from garbage. But so far it's a very good initiative to set a certain tariff regarding the power purchase agreement signed between the concerned government and the investor who is the owner of the generator or the plant that produces electricity from garbage. But so far, I don't have a comprehensive grasp of the technologies that can be used. But once it's available for me, I'll make some sort of demonstration regarding these technologies in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So Karim, I think there are also some questions for you. That came from your presentation. Several countries have designed some energy transition or progression shift strategies to renewable energy by either 2030 or 2025. What institution and structure risks are hindering some or most of these countries in attaining this transition? And then also, Karim, I think you can address this question from Sarah, who's asking about your views on COVID-19 and its effect on the energy demand in the Egyptian market. Like, is it affecting it negatively?
First of all, I thank you for your questions, but I want to say is that we have a big dilemma here. I want also to say something about Mostafa he's talking about that in Egypt, yes, we are moving towards the decarbonizing. I want to start with this example, but we have the problem that also in the Egyptian law and from the institution which is making to control all of the energy market here in Egypt, want to limit the production. For example, limit the production of the PV solar cell for 300 megawatt only per year. And when we asked about why the government wants that we have a lot of manufacturing facilities that can produce more than 1,000, you didn't get the right answer. But from my point of view, the answer that the government itself have a lot of loans, which they get from a lot of banks for the older strategies for 10 or 12 years. And all of these loans have a lot of benefit, which come back to the banks in the nearby. So how the government will judge back all of this money to the banks while all of the people now are trying to generate electricity by themselves? You can answer it. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for the government to get all of the production, all of this strategy production for the electricity and give it to the private sector in one day. Very, very difficult. I can assure that some countries, even in Europe and in USA, are considering it as a strategic, something related to the national security. This is some countries are considering the electricity like this, and that's why you cannot move completely to decarbonizing project, like especially for the energy sector in one day, because there are a lot of heavy duties for the government. They need to overcome it in the next few years. Then they need to start a clear vision that giving the private sector all of the route in order to reduce their electricity, produce all of the decarbonizing projects by themselves. So from my point of view, who is not helping the government itself. That's why I'm talking about the vision. If you want to move, you need to have this vision. And we can see in a lot of visions which is very, very succeed in Germany. In Germany is considered one of the big markets for the nuclear power station, but they are celebrating from almost 3 months or something that they shut down all of the nuclear power station. However, Germany can earn a lot of money from reducing all of these nuclear producer, but they have the vision in order to go to decarbonizing, and in order to go to renewable energy, they move to renewable energy. And nowadays, they are producing a very, very new law. This is the new German law, which is helping every consumer, in order to produce his electricity by himself, not only to buy it in the grid, to invest it with the factory. This is my point of view that we are seeing. The vision is the most important thing for the governmental in order to move to this transition.
All right.
This is answer number.
Thank you, Karim. So we have like 2 minutes. And Tosin, have you seen your questions with respect to the ongoing cleanup? And then also maybe Karim, you can talk about this question from Taron, where he's asking what would you suggest the startups to focus on, energy storage or generation? But first, I would like Tosin to respond to her question from Mo, and also I see another question from Sally. Tosin, just briefly, 2 minutes, because we're out of time.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Okay, so regarding the organic cleanup, now President Buhari already in I think it was about 2016, he already issued about $1 billion for the organic cleanup, which was going to last for the space of 5 years, which should be ending this year, 2020. But the issue is that the state of the cleanup itself is going to take at least 25 years, to be honest, before something really can before the place can become green and biodiversity.
Yes.
So I mean, there's a lot of investments being put into the environmental cleanup, but it's going to take a lot of years. Thank you.
All right, so Karim, please do summarize your response.
Yeah, I also want to give an advice for all of the startups which is working for now for the energy transition in Africa. They need to focus on 2 things, which is very, very important for them in order to start the new era of this transition. I am very happy also that we have one of the audience for us here is Mrs. Sarah Al-Komi. She is also one of the engineers who is working for the Renewable Authority here in Egypt, and she is my friend. And for 3 days, I was asking her what we get for the renewable from is training. A lot of people are make their startups, try to contact a lot of suppliers, a lot of PV solar suppliers, a lot of wind energy production suppliers, and the strange things they are looking for Europe, and very, very unique. If you see this trend also, which we get it from the African Commission from the last year, that all of the people are working in the renewable energy try to get this technology from Europe, but we need to create our technology by ourselves. We need to ask our universities which universities are making a new technology or making a new development for the renewable energy. Then we can invest in it. Then we can try to get this technology and we try to. That is my advice, that we need to keep touch with the training, and we need to nowadays, and we need also to try to contact all of the African universities in order to see the new ideas and new technology in the stock market. This is my idea.
So thank you very much. And Ahmed, could you respond on the issue of corruption? I've seen a question with respect to corruption on the African continent, and like, is it a major barrier to energy transitions in Africa? Just 2 minutes, and then we shall close our webinar.
Yeah, of course. I can tell you a very short thing regarding Melior, a lot about the corruption that we are facing here. The big issue for me regarding the corruption, that we see a lot of macro companies, like a big companies, are making a lot of startups. That's what I'm seeing right now. A lot of big businesses are and they open a lot of startups in order to get a lot of loans from a lot of banks, and it comes back to the same source that we faced it 2 times in South Africa, 1 time in Morocco as well. One time. That, from my point of view, we need to track all of this. This is from my point of view, and also we need to search for the entity. And I have an example for search and entity project, and this is a big project in Finland, which they are helping every person in his home in his home in order to make his company, but he need to make a lot of legal things that he can invest in the renewable energy. They help them to go to this low carbon by very shorter way, by very easy way, not by making a lot of process and a lot of paper that we are facing here in Africa.
All right, thank you. So we shall have our concluding remarks, and I invite you, Mostafa, just to conclude in 2 minutes, and then Tosin, make your concluding remarks in 2 minutes, and then Karim, you make your concluding remarks in 2 minutes, and then that will be the end of our webinar. Mostafa, please.
Yeah. To conclude, I'd like to mention that transitioning to development of renewable energy and transitioning to a low carbon economy became a priority, not only in Egypt, but also in numerous African countries, in order to reduce carbon footprint, coping with environmental standards. Governments should set efficient policies in order to promote such transitioning to a low carbon economy. And such policies shall be supported by internal legislations in order to give incentives for developers in order to encourage them to pump more investment, and streamlining the procedure issues that may come as a barrier. Another important issue is the research and development in renewable energy developments. And in this respect, I'd rather to refer to flared gas, which is another important issue that might face some African countries, including Egypt. And this actually should have a considerable attention by governments in order to reduce carbon footprint. Transition to low carbon economy might be important, but so far it did not receive the attention that should be given to it. So I invite you and all the stakeholders in order to make and set sessions and argumental sessions in order to pave the way for investors and other governmental bodies to have and adopt sufficient policies in order to promote such transitioning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tosin, could you please make your concluding remarks?
Thank you so much to Dr. Victoria and all of the other panelists. I just wanted to make this final remarks, and I know Dr. George Wood was one who actually said this. He said that the world might not be ready for the energy transition, and maybe Nigeria as well, not ready for the energy transition, but climate change does not care who's ready or not. And also, we can, at the same time, in the same breath, we should always think of where exactly is Africa in this energy transition. We still need to find a way of managing the decline of fossil fuels. That means still exploiting gas, but also taking renewable energy very seriously. So thank you very much. And those are my final remarks.
All right, and Karim, yes, 2 minutes for your final remarks, please.
Yes, I want to start first with answering Mrs. Sarah for her question about the negative effect of the COVID-19 on the electricity market. And I want to give her a clear answer that we have -6% decrease in the demand of the electricity market across the world. But we have a very positive thing that we have across 1.3% increase in the demand for the renewable energy. This is according to International Energy Agency in Paris. So we have a very, very good, we are in a very, very good way in order to moving to renewable energy market. That's a good thing that we are doing. And I want to, at the end, I want to say two things. I want to give advice to the governments, and I want to give advice for the entrepreneurs as well. As my first advice to the government, they need to give a very, very clear vision. And I want to say it again, the word is the transition, and give this all of these guidelines and transmit it to a very good laws, which is help the private sector and all of the regular people in order to invest in the renewable energy business and all of the low carbon economy, because this is very, very important for all of the government. This is the first thing. The second thing that I want to advise all of the entrepreneurs, that they have you need to start your business. Don't be afraid from starting your business in the renewable energy, because as I told you, at 2040, all of the energy business will around the world will move to around to be 18% all of the production. And here we have a new market that we are facing. The infrastructure that we got over the 60 years, all of it completely depend on the fossil fuels that we are learning even in the university. But now we are learning a new thing, that we have a new era, and for every entrepreneur or every startup, a new era mean a new business. A new business mean a new market. You have a lot of markets that are open, especially for our lovely continent, Africa. It's a very, very promising one that you can start. You can start your initiative. You can start your you can start your startup. Then you can move on it. And also, I'm available any time to give any advice related to renewable energy, especially for the solar PV. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you very much, Tosin. Thank you very much, Mostafa, and thank you very much, Karim. This marks the end of our webinar, and please do remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It has all the previous webinars connected to the African Energy Transitions book launch. So if you missed the webinars on energy, the energy debate, and also the webinar on charcoal status, on the status of charcoal, you can still find them on my YouTube channel. Tomorrow we shall have a webinar focused on international arbitration in the African energy sector. And then on 16th, we shall have a special webinar on nuclear energy developments in Africa with an expert from the Nuclear Energy Association, together with other panelists from Africa. So please don't forget to log in for these webinars. It's still the same link. And also do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We shall email you the soft copies of the book chapters and the book once it's published. So look out for the books, and all our videos will be featured. So thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you very much, the participants, and do have a lovely evening. This marks the end of our webinar, and bye-bye.